My name is Andrew Rucker Jones. The title of the story is Dinner Ritual. This is the short excerpt. It was 3 in the morning on his 6th birthday, and Mother had finally gone to bed alone when his father shook him awake and whispered for him to be quiet. His father wrapped Eugene in a heavy blanket, lifted him, and gave him a handkerchief when Eugene slipped on their way up the stairs. 3 floors later, they stood before the maintenance exit to the roof. His father put Eugene down, put a finger to his lips, and winked. He hopped to pull a key from its hiding place atop the door frame. The winter wind on the rooftop drove Eugene back a step, but his father picked him up and carried him to the center of the roof. Stars stretched across the sky like accidental pinpricks in a cloth, but it was still more than Eugene had ever seen from underneath the blanket of streetlights and yellow kitchen windows. Watch, watch. Father pointed to the emptiest part of the sky. A star streaked and disappeared. Eugene's hands went to his mouth. Another streak, and another. It's a meteor shower, Gene. I stopped to watch on my way home. They pointed and marveled until their toes were cold. The next morning, Eugene had a burning fever. Dinner Ritual is about a married couple, which you don't really hear in the excerpt because it's also about Eugene and his backstory, so to speak. The married couples, Eugene and Sarah, have incompatible needs for structure and spontaneity in their relationship. Sarah is suffocating under the premeditated nature of everything Eugene brings to the marriage and his expectation of the same from her. Eugene, for his part, can't access his spontaneity because it's attached to memories of his father, whose spontaneity led to the disintegration of Eugene's family. After Eugene's mother leaves his father to live with her sister and takes Eugene with, he lives a highly structured, even ritualized life. Part of the structure is necessitated by the constraints of 2 working women raising a child, and part simply comes from his mother's character. Eugene takes this with him into life as a recipe for success. Yeah, my first draft was over 3 years ago, and my last draft over 2 years ago, so it's hard to recall what motivated me to write this and why. Naturally, there is some of me in Eugene. I sometimes cook to excess, and I express love through food. I've also had to develop more flexibility in my marriage, and my difficulty in doing that has on occasion spawned fears of abandonment. There is another experience, though, that I believe contributed to this story significantly. On our honeymoon, my wife and I visited Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Florida. One exhibit was a looping video of Japanese people laughing. 20 years later, my memory of the details is fuzzy. I don't, for instance, remember whether the people involved were attached to Buddhism or Shintoism, but I'm fairly certain a religion was involved. But the crucial part of the display was that the laughing was a ritual. The Japanese knew the value of laughing in a social sense and a health sense. So they gathered together, struck a gong, and laughed for a while with no other provocation. Another strike of the gong, they stopped. The idea of structuring one of the most spontaneous human acts fascinated me and found its way into this story. Yeah, when reviewing the questions for this interview, my first reaction was, you assume I know what I'm doing. I didn't agree to the interview because I had anything brilliant to impart, unfortunately. I agreed in order to make myself think critically about important questions in writing. Unfortunately, even after thinking critically, I find myself unable to answer this question, at least the way it's asked. The best I can offer is how I approach my characters and what I consider my better fiction. I love them. They do things they regret as well as things they're proud of, and I want to see both and love them for it. I want to rejoice in their successes and grieve their failures. Maybe it's from that love that growth stems as I allow them to stumble through their problems to a resolution. That's unfortunately really all I have to offer. Yeah, another one I struggled with. I don't have a fully developed theory of this issue, nor do I think myself particularly adept at it. I realize that this story has a surprising ending, and yet still, I don't consider myself particularly adept at it. Plot twists for the sake of plot twists annoy me, but that leaves me wondering for my own writing how I can make the plot interesting when the end seems so clear and obvious. I struggle with it. My flippant answer might be kill off a central character. Death can easily surprise in a narrative, yet death as the ultimate closure, the ultimate disconnect, always feels inevitable. More seriously, though, the direction I most often find myself taking is trying to make other possible endings just as viable. I'm suspicious of anything that blindsides the reader, so the reader is going to see the end coming, but the reader might well see 3 other conclusions coming as well, and that's what keeps the tension up. Finally, though, I mostly try to trust that the journey is what the story is about more than a surprising twist at the end. Shakespeare always ended his comedies with everyone marrying and his tragedies with everyone dying. We know the outcome before we read the first word, yet we read them because the story is told well. Yeah, I thought long and hard about this and naturally found myself revisiting work that has moved me emotionally. Nothing that immediately came to mind had an ending that surprised me. Perhaps the authors were so sublime I've forgotten the surprise in the face of the inevitability. I don't know. It was only after doing more systematic review that I recalled a good story that I believe is both surprising and inevitable in its conclusion. It's 10 Poisons That Cannot Kill the Queen by Marie Croak and Anna Madden, and it appears in issue 24 of Lackingtons.